Serena had always thought of herself as someone who had her life together. She was in her late 20s, thriving in her career and married to Lucas, a man she thought she'd spend forever with. They had met in college, their bond growing stronger over the years. But the perfect image she had painted for herself would soon be shattered by a whirlwind of emotions, decisions, and ultimately betrayal. It all began one late autumn evening, a few months after Lucas and Serena had moved into their new home. Things had been fine at first. She was busy with work, and Lucas, an aspiring architect, had just taken on a big project. But somewhere in the midst of their daily routines, Serena noticed that the spark between them had started to dim. She couldn't pinpoint exactly when it happened, but the conversations had become fewer, the laughter had stopped, and their intimacy had dwindled. One evening, while scrolling through social media, Serena stumbled upon a post that made her heart skip a beat. It was a photo of Mark, her college friend. He was smiling, his arms around a group of friends at a reunion. The image reminded her of the carefree days when they had stayed up late, talking about their dreams, their futures, and the mysteries of life. Serena and Mark had always shared an easy camaraderie back in college. They were the kind of friends who could talk about anything and everything for hours. No judgment, no boundaries. It was a friendship that, in hindsight, had blurred the lines just a little too much. But at the time it felt harmless. Serena hadn't heard from Mark in years, but the picture sparked something inside her. She found herself lingering on the post, wondering how he was, and more importantly, why she felt a pull toward him after all these years. She had been feeling so disconnected from Lucas lately, and she realized she missed the connection she once had with Mark, the deep, unspoken understanding that existed between them. Curiosity got the better of her, and she decided to reach out to him. She sent a simple message, "Hey, long time no see, how have you been?" Within minutes, Mark responded. The conversation quickly picked up where it had left off years ago, effortless and engaging. They reminisced about old times, laughed at memories from college, and shared updates about their lives. Serena found herself surprised by how comfortable she felt talking to him again, like no time had passed. Over the next few weeks, their conversation deepened. They began texting more often, sometimes late into the night when Serena found herself unable to sleep. The connection was undeniable. Mark was different from Lucas. He was spontaneous, adventurous, and offered a sense of excitement that had been missing in her life. The more they talked, the more Serena realized how much she missed the feeling of being understood without having to explain herself. One evening, Mark suggested they meet for coffee. He was in town for a business trip, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity to catch up. Serena hesitated for only a moment before agreeing. She told herself it was innocent, a way to reconnect with an old friend. After all, what harm could a simple coffee date do? The day of the meeting arrived. Serena's heart raced as she drove to the cafe. She told Lucas she was meeting a friend from college, but she left out the details. As she walked into the cafe, she spotted Mark sitting in the corner, looking just like she remembered, his smile still the same, his eyes still holding that spark of mischief. When he saw her, he stood up, his arms open in greeting. They hugged briefly and then sat down. The conversation flowed easily, just like it always had. They talked about their careers, their relationships, their personal lives. But there was an unspoken tension between them now, a weight that neither of them acknowledged. Every glance, every smile felt loaded with something deeper. Serena couldn't ignore the pull she felt toward him. Mark was different now, more confident, more mature, and yet he still had that playful energy that made her feel alive. They talked for hours, and as the evening wore on, Serena began to realize how much she had missed the way Mark made her feel special, seen, and important. When the time came to say goodbye, Mark walked her to her car. The cool night air hung between them, thick with unsaid words. Then, without warning, he leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't just a peck on the cheek, it was deep, filled with longing and almost desperate. Serena's heart pounded in her chest. She pulled away quickly, feeling a rush of emotions flood her. What was she doing? She was married, for crying out loud. But even as she felt guilty, there was an undeniable part of her that wanted more. "I shouldn't have done that," Mark said, his voice low, but his eyes held a certain vulnerability. "But I can't deny what I'm feeling, and I think you feel it too." Serena didn't know how to respond. She didn't want to ruin everything, but at the same time, she couldn't ignore the chemistry that was sparking between them. I don't know what to say," Serena stammered, her mind racing. "I'm married, Mark, I can't." "I understand," he interrupted gently, "but you deserve to feel something. Serena, you deserve to feel alive again." Serena drove home that night in a daze, her mind consumed with what had just happened. The kiss replayed in her mind over and over again. She tried to push it away, to ignore it, but it lingered like a shadow haunting her. Over the next few days, Mark continued to text her, and their conversations grew more intimate. He told her he was thinking about her, that he couldn't stop replaying their time together, and each time she replied, Serena could feel the pull between them growing stronger. They were teetering on the edge of something dangerous, but neither one of them was willing to step back. Then a few weeks later they met again, this time in a hotel room Mark had booked for the weekend. Serena hesitated as she stood outside the door, her heart pounding. She knew what this was, what it could lead to, but she couldn't stop herself. When Mark opened the door, he didn't say anything. He simply took her hand and led her inside. And that night, everything changed. What followed was a series of secret meetings hidden behind lies and stolen moments of passion. Mark became a drug to Serena, an escape from the emotional numbness she felt in her marriage. With him she could feel alive again, wanted again, desired again. But every time she was with him, the guilt would gnaw at her, the realization that she was betraying Lucas, the man who trusted her, who loved her unconditionally. As the weeks turned into months, Serena's marriage began to unravel. She became distant from Lucas, no longer able to hide the emotional disconnect that had grown between them. She avoided conversations, lied about where she was, and grew more consumed by the affair. Lucas, sensing the change, began to question her, but Serena always had an excuse: work, late meetings, long hours. She felt trapped in a web of deceit, unsure of how to escape. But the truth always finds a way to surface. One evening, Lucas came home earlier than usual. He walked into their living room, holding a small envelope. He had found something that shattered the fragile world Serena had built. It was a letter, written by Mark, accidentally left behind. It was a confession of love, of desire, of longing. Lucas had read it, and he knew. He knew everything. Serena stood frozen, the weight of her actions crashing down on her. She had no words, no excuses. The affair had been her choice, and now she had to face the consequences. Lucas, devastated, confronted her that night. The tears flowed freely, both of them broken in different ways. Serena felt a deep sorrow, realizing how much she had hurt the man who had always loved her. But in her heart she also knew that the affair had exposed something deep inside her, a need, a hunger for connection and excitement that she hadn't been able to fulfill in her marriage. The days that followed were a blur of pain, guilt, and self-reflection. Serena didn't know what would happen next, whether her marriage could be saved or if Lucas would ever trust her again. But one thing was certain. The affair had changed everything. The betrayal had fractured their relationship, and it would take more than apologies and promises to heal the wounds she had caused. In the end, Serena learned a hard lesson about the consequences of infidelity. She had chased fleeting passion and excitement, but in doing so she had lost the love and trust of the person who mattered most. And as she stared into the mirror, she had to ask herself, was it worth it? That's a wrap for today's story, but the adventure doesn't end here. What do you think really happened? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this confession, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that will keep you guessing. Until next time.